Hey, what's up? What's up? You're hanging with the Niners nut on this beautiful Sunday morning. At least it's morning here in the East Coast. Wanted to just get a quick check in covering last week's blowout opening day win for the 49ers against the very sluggish, horrible, boring, lowly, lost, sick looking Steelers. What the fuck happened to that team, man? I really wonder, man. You know what's funny is that I always respect Mike Tomlin, think he's a great coach. I mean, guy's never had a losing season, but last week that team looked like they were in a tailspin loss from the first drive to the last couple of minutes of the game, man. Kenny Pickett looked like absolute shit. And I thought he would have improved. I know it's still early, but still, man, them fans in Pittsburgh are going to get on his ass real early. And the sad thing is, you're going to bring in a guy who blows in Mitchell Trubisky. So your best bet is to stick with what you got. But going into last week's win, Najee Harris didn't hear a fucking peep from him, man. We locked his ass up. Fryermuth caught the touchdown, but it was a garbage touchdown at that point. I mean, can't say enough good things about how amazing the Niners looked on both sides of the ball. If you saw the game, they looked like they hadn't missed a step at all. Shanny called a gem of a game. I loved what I saw from the play calling. The one takeaway that I have that's a negative was the penalties, and a lot of them came on the offensive line. We had 11 penalties, but you wouldn't have known it because the Niners were whipping their ass all day long, but you cannot have 11 penalties whatsoever. Way too much, way too many in various segments. But for the most part, look, the offensive line pushed way for McCaffrey to get over 100 yards, which was great. I mean, let's face it, McCaffrey looks like he's back to his regular, status. Hopefully he stays healthy the rest of the way. I would like to see Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason get a lot more play, just to give him a blow and everything. And I'm still hoping to see Kyle Juszczyk, who did a phenomenal job blocking, catch a pass, or be used as a wide receiver out of the backfield. But at this point, I kind of sound like a broken-ass record. So whatever, who cares, man? Getting on that, Mr. Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, looked phenomenal last week. Again, what was he, 19 of 29? We'll get to the stats in a second. But if anybody was concerned about what he was going to look like, how he was going to throw the ball, put the concerns aside. Guy looks great. Again, hadn't missed a step, didn't panic one iota. Again, it's one of the aspects of his game that is just phenomenal for somebody his age with his limited experience. The man does not get flustered back there. And you know what's funny? I watched so many other games after the Niner game that day, and all I saw was fluster city from quarterbacks, whether it was Dak Prescott, even that blowout of the New York Giants. I don't give a shit because Dak didn't do much, didn't have to do much in that game because the Giants absolutely suck. Daniel Jones flushed the city. He sucks too. $40 million to a guy who doesn't deserve it, but that's the Giants' fault because you overpaid a guy for 4 years and now you have to stick with. Not that good. Fluster City. There were a couple other quarterbacks that got flustered real quick. Kenny Pickett was good reason to be because we were in his ass left and right. He was flustered City. So many other quarterbacks getting happy feet back there like you wouldn't believe. But again, Purdy, solid as a rock, man. Didn't miss a beat. I think he was 19 to 29, threw 2 touchdown passes, 2 to Brandonaiyuk. Listen, Ayuk has just gotten better every year. I love the way they were utilizing him last week. Guy's an animal, man. I mean, I love too that we may have one week where you see Deebo doing more receiving than he is running, or doing dual, or doing more rushing, and then maybe you'll have Ayuk doing that. I love that. That makes us so much more dangerous of a team. The upfront blocking by Kittle, of course, was phenomenal. The offensive line for most part of the game, I didn't have a problem with. It was just some of the penalties. And again, I think that's going to be just shaking off the rust a little bit, and at the same time getting used to, a new right tackle, Colton McKivitz. I know there's going to be people that were going to be critical of him, but look, he was playing up against TJ Watt. TJ Watt's a fucking nightmare. I mean, look, that's something I think that we can all agree with. TJ Watt is just a lights out player, man. I mean, and I say this with all respect to J.J. Watt, I think he's better than J.J. Watt. I think he's faster, and he has more explosiveness off the ball than his brother did. But, what do you expect to happen? I know he gave up 3 sacks last week, but other than that, again, the offensive line pushed forward for over 100 yards. They gave Purdy time to be protected. I like the fact that, Purdy got hit. You need that hit after an injury like that just to get your head right. And I like that he was, using his legs a little bit, which was great. Looking over at the defensive side of the ball, I just got one thing to say, but I'm going to say it 3 times. Drake Jackson, Drake Jackson, Drake Jackson. I say it 3 times for the 3 sacks that he had. Drake Jackson looked like a wrecking ball last week. A wrecking ball. I mean, he was all over the place, man. I love the 1 sack he had on Kenny Pickett when he tried to escape and he caught up to him and just took his feet out from under him. Man, if Jackson can stay stable like that all season long, and Bosa, of course, does what Bosa does, can you imagine where this defensive front is going to be? It's going to be scary, man. Javon Hargrove worked every penny. You saw him getting into the action. They plugged up that run real quick. Najee Harris looked lost, man. They couldn't run the ball worth the shit. Got that pressure on Pickett all day long. We're closing that pocket out, forcing him to either move or throw, and forced him into turnovers, which was awesome, man. I mean, Shavarius Ward, again, I don't know why they don't talk about him in the upper echelon of cornerbacks, because he should be there. That guy is good, man. And again, Talanoa Hufnagel comes up huge with the interception and then the toss to Gibson. Man, they have become a really good combination, Hufnagel and Gibson. So many things that I've read on Gibson, whether it's just critiques of the upcoming season, were questionable about his age, this and that. Some guys get better with age, man. And he's one of those guys. So I love that duo. Fred Warner, lights out last week, man, like always. Dre Greenlaw played well. Again, the defense did exactly what the defense does. Steve Wilkes didn't miss a beat. And Jake Moody was perfection, man. That was the one part of the game I was friggin' nervous about, man. Thank you for everybody who's in here with me on the live cast. Please send me any comments that you have. Love to hear from you guys and talk to you. Yeah, man, Moody was on right on par with everything. So it was a perfect opening day, man. I couldn't say more. I was really happy with it. Trent Williams was right. It got fucking boring in the second half, the game, I kept waiting for Pittsburgh. I'm like, yo, is this team ever going to wake up? Like, you're at home, you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. When you look at that roster, man, you got some talent on that team, whether it's Deontay Johnson, Pickens, Najee Harris, especially on the offensive side of the ball, Jaylen Warren. But I don't know what happened with that offense, and I'm curious to know if they're going to get back up to speed as to where, a lot of people said they should be, but it don't look like that. Yeah, the O-line is what's scaring me and Kyle Abuse. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. You know what? I'm not afraid with it, but it was a concern. But again, McKivitz is going up against TJ Watt. Some guys are going to get their sacks, man. It's like Stephon Diggs, some guys are going to get their catches. I feel the same way about DeAndre Hopkins. Just some guys are going to they're that talented, or the offense or the defense is, put around them for them to get what they need to get, But I think that the offensive line will stabilize a little more. Again, they did a good job on the ground game, and they protected Purdy, which was great for the most part, other than TJ Watt's 3 sacks. But the penalties is what bothered me. Can't have that. Cannot have 11 penalties whatsoever. But look, it was blowout win, blowout win, not at home, in a tough place to play against, I still believe, in a very talented team with a great coach. Remember, Shanahan's a genius. He has to protect him. Look, Shanny called a great game, man. I thought the offensive flow was phenomenal. I like that, he went with the pass early on. I like that he was utilizing the way he was utilizing McCaffrey. They were pushing forward and getting chunks of yardage all over the place. He didn't really, keep handcuffs on Purdy whatsoever, and paid off really well. So I can't complain about Shanny's play calling. I really liked it. I'm anxious to see what happens today with the Rams team, and not to just move forward to that, but you can't ding your only quarterback. Okay. I don't know what you mean by that. Can you explain that a bit more if you don't mind? Cali 49ers. Looking at this week's game, I don't think it's a trap game. I think the Rams played well last week. Seattle looked like shit. I didn't expect that to happen. But, I give them credit for doing it without, Cooper Kupp. I mean, that Puka Nacua, and some of the other guys that filled in well. Unnecessary hits when you are winning. Okay. I could understand that. Did you want them to pull Purdy out of the game at that point? Is that what you're saying? Because they did. Darnell did come in. I don't know. He didn't do much, but it was kind of mop-up time. But I get what you're saying. I'm curious to know what kind of game Channy calls today against a team who, again, doesn't have a lot of talent on paper, but played pretty hard last week. I'm curious to know what we're going to utilize, because they are depleted in certain areas, the Rams. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen this week. Hopefully, we get to see Elijah Mitchell a little bit more and Jordan Mason, just to give McCaffrey, the needed rest that he needs and whatnot. And I'm curious to know I think the defense is just going to rain terror on Stafford as usual. Getting into the backfield, and they got to plug that run, man. I know that Kyrie and Williams had a decent game last week, so it'll be interesting today. But I wanted to just go over some stats from last week, looking at some of those, looking at the game stats, which was for the most part really in our favor. If you were watching the game live and you saw the penalties, there was a couple of segments there where it just seemed like we were getting flagged left and right. That was the whole Trey Lance. If you're winning or losing, let your second stringers third get playing time. I agree with you, Cali 49ers. I think that goes for all teams too sometimes. Unless you're the Bill Belichick. Remember when Bill Belichick just kept pissing on the Tennessee Titans? That year, I think it was like 50-7, left all the starters in. But I agree with you. If you're winning by a good amount of time, let the other guys get in, man. I love when I see guys get in that don't usually play so much. It's imperative, especially to keep the rest of the guys healthy and to give other people experience. I agree with you on that. Looking at some of the game stats individually last week, of course, Purdy, 19-29, 220, averaging 7 and more per pass, 2 touchdowns. Sacked 3 times, had a rating of 111.3. Can't ask more of the man. Can't ask more of the man. That's what he does. When people come up to me and they're like, what's with you and Brock Purdy, blah, 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 because I always put him in the upper echelon of quarterbacks. I'm like, are you not watching the games? Have you seen the stats? He is what you have to be watching to see what he does. I'm like, that's why he's there. All the things we've mentioned before. Doesn't buckle under pressure, which is the most important. Doesn't force what's not there. Can use his feet when he has to. Gonna sound crazy, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Watching Purdy play at this point, he reminds me of it. I'm not saying before I get hung here or like burned at the stake by certain people. The way he's playing the game, in terms of the way he sees the field and operates, is Montana-like. Is very Montana-like. Also, what is Dwelly good for? Willis should be playing. What is Dwelly good for? Dwelly's not a bad backup tight end, But I see your point, too, because I was a little surprised that Willis made the team. But again, Shanny likes to go with sometimes 2 and 3 and 4 tight ends, I guess. Also having the injury to Kittle early on, knowing his injury history, as well as certain sets with running and whatnot and blocking. To be honest, I'm wondering if they went with 4 tight ends because he may be worried about the offensive line. Something to think about. Going back to the stats, McCaffrey, of course, 22 carries, 152, averaging 6.9 a touchdown. Not much more you can say about that. Guy's an ultimate and extra workhorse. What a steal that was with the trade with Carolina. And then from there, rushing the ball, Brock Purdy, 3 carries, 20 yards. But I like that. Again, that's what I mean by Montana. Like in his early days, Montana had some very, very stable leg game. Not Steve Young, but he could use his legs when he had to. Mitchell, 5 carries, 10. Didn't get a lot of burn that way. Catching the ball, receiving. Brandonaiyuk, 8 catches, 129, averaging 16 and 2 touchdowns. Targeted 8 times, 8 for 8. Ayuk is legit. Deebo, 5 for 55, targeted 7. We know how valuable Deebo is. GK, 3 for 19 and 6. Look, GK is the type of tight end that does not need to have a large amount of catches per week. He's also one of the most valuable total tight ends in terms of blocking. So with the restructuring, are we trading for right tackle, another pass rusher? That's a good question, bro. I thought about that a lot earlier this week. I'm wondering what's going to happen with the right tackle. Like, are they going to ride McKivitz the rest of the season? If he stabilizes, if he doesn't, what do we do then? Are we going to wait till the draft? Are you going to make a move? Are you going to sign someone? Defensively, I don't really think you have to make many moves right now unless there's injuries, because the defense looks, lights out. Hopefully, again, it's a long season, 16 weeks to go. McCaffrey caught 3 out of the backfield for 17. Other than that, we stuck to 4 guys. Juwan Jennings and Elijah Mitchell were targeted. I'd like to see Juwan get some more catches, of course. Then going to the defensive side of the ball, Diamador Lenore gets better every game, it seems. He's improved every season, 10 tackles. Fredwarner, 8 tackles, 1 for a loss, 1 pass defended. Greenlaw right behind him with 6 tackles and a tackle for a loss. Talanoa Hufanega, Troy Polamalu, 2.0. Tackle for a loss. Ambry Thomas looked really good. I don't know if you guys were catch him. He looked good. Isaiah Oliver, 5 tackles. Drake Jackson, again, 3 sacks. Man, please keep that up. I know you're not going to always get 3 sacks a game, but please keep it up. Guy physically, he looks like he's improved too, man. Hargrove had a sack, plug in the middle, worked every penny. And, of course, Shavarius Ward and Tashawn Gibson. Cleveland Farrell had a nice little, he had what do you have? He had a quarterback hit. I like the 2 quarterbacks hit and a tackle for a loss. Look, if that's what we get out of him, that's fine. The rotation is deep. We all know that. Speaking of which, it was nice to see Kerry Hyder Jr. get a sack. I always liked Kerry Hyder, man. I think he's got a good engine. And 5 sacks for the defense. 4 passes defended. 8 tackle for losses, and a really important stat that gets overlooked, 9 quarterback hits. They fucking racked Kenny Pickett's ass, man. Here's the major issue with Kyle. He thinks scheme is better than talent, and it catches up with us in crucial. See that point. I like that. That's a good argument you make right there. He thinks scheme is better than talent. Interesting. I think that, and again, I'm just speaking from my opinion, there's a lot of that goes on. But I see both points. I see yours and I see his. I see yours in terms of when I think of the New England Patriots. So you talk about them kind of, now it's Bill O'Brien running the offense, but they've kind of followed the same system for a long time. And obviously, Mac Jones is not Tom Brady, or not Tom Brady-like yet. But they haven't really plugged a wide receiver into the mix. I mean, Juju is good, but he's not as good as he was, especially with the current knee issue when he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm always wondering, do they not just have the talent and they just keep using the same scheme? Now, you transfer that over to San Francisco, and I can see what you mean to some extent. That's a very good point to make, man. That's something I would like to cover more in a separate episode, because that is really deep. It's really good. But again, I think that I could also say that a lot of these players, especially on the offensive side of the ball, have been together for a very long time. And Kyle uses the scheme that they know how to play with. But the question is, what happens when the scheme changes because certain talent's not there? That's something to think about. And also, too, can you adjust from the scheme? I think he's the type of guy that's extremely cerebral, but looks like kind of OCD when it comes to the scheme, if you know what I mean. If it work, okay, but Kyle can't adjust. Yeah, there's some of that sometimes, and I'm being objective because I love Kyle, but I've also called him off in the past as saying he's a little too conservative at times. But I felt that way about Jim Harbaugh, too. I felt that there was too much conservatism in the game plan. I guess you can say that a lot about certain cerebral coaches, but it's definitely an interesting point, man. Good topic right there. Looking at the opposing team, Pickett was 31 of 46, which really isn't terrible numbers, but a lot of it was throwaway garbage check down bullshit. He threw for 232, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, got sacked 5 times, and the defense again was up in his ass all day long. He looked panicky as a mofucker, bro. Najee Harris helped at 31, Jalen Warren 6, and Kenny Pickett 4. They didn't do shit. And I say this all the time, and I know people who know their shit know what I'm saying. Every time we hold a team under 100 yards on the ground, for the most part, we win or in the game. What if he put his ego aside? Look, I don't know if it's so much his ego of Shanahan. I just think sometimes he's very systematic. We kind of saw that in the Super Bowl against the Patriots when he was with the Atlanta Falcons. He didn't make the right call, so maybe he's just too tight to the system and the scheme, and he's not much of a gambler. He's not much like Mike Martz used to be, if you remember him with the Rams, or we had him one year with Alex Smith, or Air Coryell with the famous San Diego Chargers. He's not like that. Or the run and shoot offense with Warren Moon, Ernest Gibbons, Webster Slaughter, Haywood Jeffries, Curtis Duncan. Definitely not a gunslinger type of offensive coordinator. He's more cerebral, so I have to appreciate that with him. Catching the ball, Allen Robinson was the guy. 5 catches, 64 yards. Deontay Johnson, 3 for 48. Other than that, no wide receiver had double-digit averages. So we held their ass in check really well. Defensive backfield played phenomenal. Quan Alexander did have 8 tackles for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hats off to him. I love, gotta like Quan, man. When he's healthy, they're on, man. And again, it was just T.J. Watt really that caused a problem. But looking at something very interestingly, let's go to the team stats. And again, this was of concern. At least to me, it was. Just sliding this over. We outdid them in a lot of categories, and a lot of time when that happens, usually the team who has the most, who has more than the other team in the per category wins. Maybe he needs a different eyes, an OC who actually makes Kyle rethink his system to adjust. It's possible. I don't see it happening in the future, because let's face it, as a head coach, the only thing Kyle has to do is win a chip. Other than that, he's been successful, man. You got to admit that. Where was it? Third down efficiency, we were 6 of 13. We outdid them in total plays, total yards, total drives, yards per play, passing yards. But rushing yards, we outdid them 188 to 41. Coaching is 2 parts, and before and in the game. True, it is. But I think certain guys, look, Shanny's a cerebral guy. He comes from cerebral stock. Look who his father was, man. His father was an offensive genius. I don't know if he's not there yet like his dad, but I think he definitely has that type of, there's that type of DNA put in there. We just need to win it all, man. You can't say he didn't call a good game, though, last week. He did call a great game, but I do see your point about taking guys out in the later part of the game, especially when it's a blowout. Here we go. Penalties, 11 to 85 yards. Can't happen. Can't happen. Especially against anybody. But against a team that's on their shit. Pittsburgh wasn't on their shit. They could have taken advantage of that, but it didn't happen. How? Because that ain't the Eddie D. Randa 49ers. Either you win or your job's online. That's true. But that's the difference between Eddie D and current ownership. And we know we'd all love to have Eddie D any day. Didn't turn the ball over much. Most important stat for me was, other than the penalties, we held the ball for 37 minutes as opposed to their 22. That's how you win games. The offense goes piece by piece by piece down the field. It doesn't have to be Tua Tagliova and the Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddell, which I will just say, look, as good as that type of offense is, guess what? The sad part and the very thing to worry about with a guy like Tagliova is if he gets hits again, his career could be over. So that type of Golden State Warrior offense is great, but it doesn't always work, okay? Especially when you have an offense like ours that's very intricate, that can kill you various ways, and then has a defense that can absolutely stuff it up your ass. So I'm really happy with those stats. I'm really happy with last week's win. We need to have another one today. Hopefully it's a blowout. Hopefully we get to Matt Stafford's ass. I'd love to hear his whiny wife talk after the game. You know, as she always is posting shit about the guy's career. Man, that's got to suck to be him, especially when your wife is posting shit about how you supposedly don't get along with teammates. Yeah, I'm happy I'm not him. But yeah, again, you know, going on the road again today. It'll good short week. Thursday night is against the Giants at home. It's going to be interesting to see. I can't wait to. Oh man, I'm looking forward to that Giant game. I hope that they absolutely just fucking ass rape the Giants to no end. But one thing at a time. Yeah, today, like we were talking about, got to put the pressure on Stafford, get after him. Can't take them for granted. Obviously, no Cooper Kupp, but they did have Tutu Atwell, and Puka Nacua played well last week for them, and they did run the ball rather well. And of course, it'll be interesting to see the matchup against Aaron Donald. But other than that, look, great week last week. We need to go 2-0 would be great, especially against a division rival early on in the season. Hopefully Seattle loses. Arizona is fucking god-awful. I'd love to see Arizona beat the Giants today. Man, would that be great. But, again, long season. Hopefully no injuries. And need a W today, man. So got to take it to these goddamn Rams because we owe them one from 2 years ago, overrated as they are. And we owe Stafford big time, man. Got to get into his ass today. I want to see Bosa get his first sack. He was daring last week, but we need to see it first. I also want to see more out of Javon Kinlaw. Didn't see much out of him. Not liking it. All right. I'll be getting back to you this week with some more content. Niner Nut is out. Please always feel free to hit me with comments, questions. I think for the next segment, what I'm going to be doing is, inviting some people to join the podcast live, and we'll go back and forth because a lot of you guys always, like Cali 49, just have great points and some great input. So I really appreciate it. All right. Enjoy. Have a great day. Later.